Welcome to the show.
It's lovely to be here.
It's so amazing having you, especially on your birthday. Happy birthday.
On my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you for the cake.
Yeah? What did you want? If you had like one wish, what would you have for your birthday?
I can't tell you. You just got it all.
I know exactly what it is. I feel like it's someone leaving office. That's probably that's what I'll get. Let's talk about the book. Let's talk about your career. So I first knew you from the White House briefings. I think many people in America started knowing April Ryan from those White House briefings.
Before this administration.
Yes, before this administration. People go, oh, there's April Ryan, she asked the questions. You were, part of the crew. You were asking questions of different leaders. Under Trump, though, it feels like you have a different role, and you speak about that in the book, under fire. Do you consider yourself under fire?
Yes, I'm warred upon, W-A-R-R-E-D, upon. I don't have a different role. It's the same role. It's just this administration looks at what I ask in a different way. Trevor, I have asked questions from Bill Clinton to now, and I think I'm an equal opportunity offender. I've had people tell me, remember when the NAACP didn't like you? Remember when the Congressional Black Caucus didn't like you? Remember when the Obama administration didn't like you? Remember when the George W. Bush administration didn't like you?
Right.
Remember when the Bill Clinton administration didn't like you? I ask questions for answers and for truth. And this administration, for some strange reason, they're lumped into the same boat as the others who said, oh, she might be asking questions that we don't like, but they've taken it to another degree.
In what way?
Trying to discredit me, trying to kill my career, trying to make me look as if I'm someone that I'm not.
Right.
I am a journalist. I'm not an activist journalist. I'm just a journalist who's an activist for truth, who is activating the freedom of the press and walking in that. Because if we don't ask those questions, you're not going to find out what's happening. And it's about us being in that room, able to freely and independently ask the President of the United States questions for the American public to get answers. And John McCain was absolutely right, Trevor Noah, and I gave you your whole government name. So John McCain was absolutely right. He said, if the press is suppressed or oppressed, it begins dictatorship. And I'm really questioning what's happening now. Are we democracy or are we going down another path?
Do you feel like you're getting answers, though? Because I watch those briefings. You spend all your time asking so many questions. I see how vexed you get as reporters and as journalists together. Do you feel like that room has a purpose now under Trump?
The room always has a purpose. It's about transparency. And do we get answers? We get the answers that they want to give us. It may not necessarily be the truth. It could be spin. They're insulting our intelligence a lot of times, particularly right now with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I think of something I heard the crowd. My dear friend Sarah and her pie, yes. No, particularly with Sarah, sometimes I wonder, does she really know what's going on? And then is she spinning? I think about, there's one example that really sticks out to me, and it was recent, where the president went to a rally, and he said, when you go to the grocery store and you need your ID card, we were like, what?
Right.
And then the next day, Sarah had to press-splain, mansplaining, he said this, but this is what he meant. I mean, seriously, that's what's happening. And she said, well, when the president said that he was talking about beer and wine, we were like, no, that's not what he said.
Right.
He said when you go to a grocery store, you need your ID card. So it's a time for us to use critical thinking and really see what's going on, because we're at a critical time. We're at a time of crisis, political crisis. We're at a national security crisis. There's so much on the table, but this president smiles and acts like it's okay, and it's not.
There's no denying that America's press for a very long time, especially the mainstream press, has had a particularly white male-dominated skew, right? And so in that press room, you have a unique position, and you talk about this in the book. You're in a position where you are a journalist, but you cannot deny where you come from. You cannot deny who you are as a person. Do you think that maybe some of their retaliatory feeling towards you is that it feels like you're doing something that's oppositional because you are a black woman?
It feels like, I would say, if you can taste it, smell it, touch it, it is what it is. It's the truth.
Right.
Washington has been and still is a white male-dominated town. Even when Barack Obama was president of the United States, it was still a white male-dominated town. And for many, they don't want to relinquish what has been tradition or history. I just happen to be a black woman who is a journalist, who asks questions on everything. You know, I asked about Russia, and Sean Spicer told me to stop shaking my head. I asked about the NFL, and I'm called a name from the podium. I'm called rude. And I asked the President of the United States, you know, Mr. President, are you a racist? Now I'm on a blacklist. You know, but what's happened to me has not happened to many of the other reporters in that room. And I'm gonna give you another example. Charlottesville was a watershed moment for this president. That weekend that Charlottesville happened, I was in New Orleans receiving the Journalist of the Year Award for 2017. And that weekend, I got it that Saturday, that Sunday morning, that next day, there was this campaign ad for President Trump talking about the reporters who were trying to thwart his agenda.
Right.
The only reporter in that video was me, a White House correspondent. I was the only White House correspondent in that ad. The rest happened to be news anchors: Rachel Maddow, Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer. I'm the only one. The weekend of Charlottesville. They put a target on my head. Not one other journalist until recently has had that happen to them. Why? Because I ask questions. So if you ask me, is it about race? That's a lot of it to stir up the pot for his base.
It's interesting that you tried, and you talk about this in the book, you tried to reach out to Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
I did.
You said, let's squash this beef.
I did.
Which I found admirable, and at the same time I want to say a little naive, because I only have the image of her as Sarah. So I go like, why would you think that anything good would come of it? But you genuinely believe that if you could sit down with her and have dinner, that a human being would meet you on the other side?
You know, some people may think she's an alien, but I don't. Even in the midst of all that's happened to me. You know, Sarah is a person like I'm a person. She's a mother. I'm a mother. And when we had dinner, we broke bread. We tried to come together on the commonality. We talked about church. We talked about ourselves. We talked about our death threats. You know, she, with her death threats and mine, you know, were on the table. But what could not happen is a continuance of a friendly adversarial relationship. And that's what I had been working with for years, for 2 decades before she came in. Now, mind you, I started the job at the White House when she was in high school in Arkansas, okay? So that's saying a lot. I'm older than she is, and the lack of respect for someone who understands Washington is evident in that briefing room. But anyway, so she said to me one day after the Piegate thing that I really started as a joke. It was just a joke.
Right.
And I didn't realize the influence I had on social media, and it just blew up. And she said, where did we go wrong? And I said, let's do dinner. We said, let's do this. She's like, yes, great. And I thought that was a great moment. But the reason why we could never move past all of this animosity is because she's playing to her boss, the President of the United States of America, who clearly tells her he does not like me, who clearly says things, you know, treat her this way. But you know, this is not the traditional political game of politics, the whereas, thus thou art, you know, therefore. This is a street gutter game. Street peeps street.
Damn. Damn. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Trevor.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Trevor.
Under Fire. Fascinating, blunt, April Ryan.